So today on Online for Authors, I'm chatting with Michele Levy, author of Anna's Dance. Welcome, Michele.
Hello, hello, hello.
I am so happy to have you here. I learned a tremendous amount reading your book, but before we dive into it, can you give listeners just a quick overview of what they're going to find when they open up the cover?
Okay, well, when you open up the cover, the first thing you find is a map. And it's a map of her journey. Yeah. And it's a map that goes all the way from Trieste in Italy to Istanbul in Turkey. And after that, you kind of know at least where you're bound. What you don't know is how you're going to get there and what's going to happen on the way.
Absolutely. I love this. My first question is why a story about the Balkans when so few people know anything about it? I was amazed at how little I knew, but we'll get to that in a minute. But what made you say, this is what I want to do, is write a story about a young girl who's wandering through the Balkans?
Well, mainly because I've had a lifelong flirtation with the Balkans, and it started before I took that very trip, because it is semi-autobiographical. And so I had Balkan dance. I still do Balkan dance. I love Balkan music. I am fascinated by the recent history and horrified, and read a lot of Balkan literature in translation, I have to say. And I felt there was a story beyond my trip. I felt there was something more that could be done. But since the trip itself was like a clothes model that you could hang clothes on, I felt that I could use that as a plot mechanism to get Anna into various situations, some of which I was in, some of which I was not, most of which I was not.
Well, that was something I was going to ask you later, so we'll definitely get to that. I want to go back to Balkan history, which I knew obviously nothing about. I didn't realize I knew nothing about it. And I'm just surprised because I took several world history classes and somehow Balkan history never comes up.
Yeah, it's always been the other. In fact, I taught a course once called Exploring Europe's Other. And so Europe's other was Africa, but Europe's other was the Balkans, because they were always perceived from Europe as that wild place, full of savages.
Yes.
And that has been their depiction largely in American media, even during the Bosnian War. Those savage Serbs, what are they doing now?
Right.
So I really, however, if you look at Balkan history, you realize that it is so much a part of Western history because it was colonized by the West. And so many of its problems are precisely because the West came and
created boundaries and all the other things that we do, right?
And also the East, the Ottoman Turks, the Russians, everybody had their little thing in the Balkans, the result of which, fascinatingly enough, was that in 1914, World War I started in Sarajevo, where the Archduke Ferdinand was assassinated by a nationalist Serb who was a member of a pan-Balkan young youth, always led by the youth organization to create unity among the Balkan peoples. So
yeah, and so you'd think we would know so much more.
You would. Right. And the fact that our most recent war in the West was in the Balkans, and the fact that the situation doesn't seem resolved, at least, shall we say, it still goes on. It's like a flashpoint It's exactly where the East and the West converge, and therefore it's been kind of a hotbed.
Right.
But nobody knows that.
I know. Like I said, I was really surprised. There were several times where I had to kind of like stop, reread it, and go, "Wow, I didn't recognize that." You did a really good job of providing quite a bit of information to help people understand what was going on there. Let's talk about Anna,
Yeah.
or you said Anna. Is that Anna?
I don't know. I think Anna, but her name is Anna. But in the Balkans, she would have been Anna.
Anna. Okay. Yeah. You say that she's part you.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you said, but not all parts. So I'm just curious, which parts? Like, you know, did you fall in love in the Balkans?
No.
Okay.
But there actually was a real East German smuggler. Yeah. And I was attached to him, although not in love. But no, that is very much part of the story that I developed because I wanted it to be a vehicle for getting me to the heart of what I saw as a vehicle for fostering a greater awareness of the complexities of the Balkans. So I needed Spiro, and I needed that love. However, I will say this. My students, I was writing it when I was still teaching, and my students said, "Oh, we all know it's your husband." So, anyway.
Well, that's lovely, though, because I was going to say it was a beautiful love story. And so if it's your husband, then that's a beautiful love story.
Oh,
so it's wonderful that you have that. Absolutely. Other than Anna, who is your favorite character in the book?
Oh, I love Spiro, of course, but I think Max. Yeah. I love Max. I think Max is in fact, I'm writing a second novel and Max is going to be in it.
Oh, fabulous.
Okay. Although Anna is not.
Oh, Anna's not, but we're going to find out about Max. So what is it about Max that made him such a favorite character of yours?
Because he's a mirror for Anna. He sees himself, he's divided. He loathes himself because the part of him that is a Serb or Macedonian, as it were, is something his German part rejects because the Germans were very anti-Eastern Europe. And so he has these doubled feelings, but he has a good heart. And of course he is doing something that's illegal, but he's doing it because he's a poor kid from Eastern Germany who managed somehow to get west and doesn't, has nothing he can do. So this is an amazing career he's embarked on.
Right. Absolutely. I can say that as I was reading it, there were many times where I wanted to grab Anna and say, "You stop being out there in the middle of all of that. You need to go home."
Yeah, I mean, well, I did feel that on innumerable occasions on my own trip, but I think that she's spurred on she's an adventurer.
Yes.
She wants change. She wants, what's new. She's always dreamed of going to Istanbul. She's always dreamed of this mixture of influences and cultures and foods and smells and all of that. And so she's not about to do the sensible thing.
Right. No. And she doesn't do the sensible thing. There are many times where she's getting into a vehicle with someone she doesn't know, or she's saying, "Sure, I'll go do that." And you're like, no, you're not in a safe place. Like there's secret things happening around you and you realize that, and yet you're still headed off with people that you don't know and going and doing it. And so were you that brave when you were doing this kind of trip, or was
somewhat I was? Yeah. Somewhat. I ended up in some pretty crazy situations, and yes, I was determined to to explore, I guess you could say. I mean, I remember at one point I was hitchhiking with a British kid who was supposed to give me, so that's my protection. And that was in Italy. And we were picked up by a truck driver, right? And he was talking to my friend, and I was just we were in the Dolomites. I was just looking at this gorgeous landscape, and all of a sudden, we reach a place where it goes straight up, and it's a kind of a gravel road, or you can go to the right. And he says something to my friend, who then gets down, and suddenly there I am alone in the truck with this guy who takes up the gravel path, and later on was embarking upon taking me toward a waterfall, lest my screams be heard by anybody passing who would pass. It's, there was nothing there. But I kicked him, and in kicking him, he dropped me, and he kept saying, Roman men are good, Roman men are good. It's about the only English he knew, I guess. And sure enough, he just left me there by the waterfall. And I was like, well, this is it. It's an interesting way to die. I mean, nobody can hear me. Nobody knows I'm here. Okay, well, all right. And then finally, my idiot companion, when he sees the other guy come down the road, he figures it all out. And he hailed a car, and they went up, and they saw the tracks, and they went off the road, and then finally they came upon me, and I had a dislocated knee, so they had to, into the back of this car and drive me down a terribly, gravelly road that bounced all the time with my stupid dislocated knee, and take me to an Italian hospital, and the rest is a crazy story too, but enough.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So you were definitely way braver than I was as a teenager or early 20s. You couldn't have convinced me to go do something like that alone. And there you were, just off, essentially alone.
Yeah, I was with people I really didn't know, these kids that you meet traveling.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah, it's true.
Whatever made you decide you wanted to do that trip?
Well, originally I was going with my friend in the novel.
Yeah.
Yeah, she went, and she was her parents, were well heeled, and she'd gone to Europe many times, but she expressed the desire not to stay in 5-star hotels. And, so she was along with me, and I had friends in England that I'd worked with. And then we went to France, and I had friends that I knew in Lyon. But by the time we got to Lyon, she was getting sick from all the terrible food, which was so delicious and marvelous. And then we decided we were going to go to Italy. So we were going to take the Orient Express, and I absolutely had to do that.
Right, right.
And so, I mean, it's not dangerous. It's a train. But when we got to Trieste, after a day in which by this time I was doing everything, getting us here, getting us there, changing she just was like in a little shell. And finally, she just said, I can't take it. I'm flying home. So I was just left, and I was about, just as Anna is in the novel, I was about to fly home myself. And then I said, no, I'm here, and I'm not going to do that. And sure enough, there was a Peter who showed up. And sure enough, that part of it was true.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, I found it to be an extremely interesting story, but so many times I became Anna's mother, and I'm screaming for her to use her head and stop the nonsense, and you're going to be killed. And I kept waiting for one of these many men that she would find herself, traveling with next, to be the one that was going to hurt her.
Yeah.
There were multiple times where I was sure that Max was going to hurt her.
Oh no, I sort of got the vibe from Max that he was okay, even though it didn't.
I got the vibe that he was okay, but then all of a sudden something would happen and she'd be left somewhere for a few days, or he would kind of show up and say, we have to leave now. And it would be like, oh, or he would go off the beaten path and I would think, yep, this is it. This is where he's going to kill her, and instead he'd show her something that she wanted to see. I don't know. It was really cool.
Well,
go ahead.
Mother, you said you felt like your mother, but my Anna's mother, but my own mother was going on digs in Spain, Italy, Turkey, and then Israel. And she and an army nurse, she was in her 50s, hitchhiked through Israel. So this
was a family trait, is what you're telling me.
Yeah.
Oh, how funny. I am assuming that despite knowing what you know about the Balkan area, that you had to do a lot of research in order to make this book together.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, I sure did.
Talk with me a little bit about how that goes. What types of sources are you using? How long do you allow yourself to research before you start to write? Those kinds of things.
Well, the researching was kind of done as I moved along.
Okay.
Because, I knew Ljubljana, but did I know fully stories that were from World War II? Did I? And so I'd have to go research them.
Right. And
so then, in Serbia, there were things that needed it just, but the Macedonia thing, now that was a center. I felt that was a story that resonated. I didn't know how it would end up, that they would have to declare North Macedonia in order to exist. But I did feel that was kind of a look at all sort of othered peoples.
Right.
And so I had to do a lot of research for that. And it's very complex. And it's, it's all tangled with colonialism. And so there I consulted lots and lots of textbooks and memoirs and all that. But one day it made it what really hit home that I was on the right track is that I had gone online. And the first thing that happened was I got into the CIA's network. And suddenly I'm like, how do I get out? How do I get out? I don't want to be here. And so I had to deal with that. Even though I was such a dummy, I didn't know how it happened. But then I was researching online. I knew that there was a Macedonian diaspora. And so I was looking for maybe chat groups or something. And I was the fly on the wall. I was trolling and I got into this one and they were talking about a bomb had gone off in Bulgaria somewhere. And, and they were talking about all this. And there were people who were like, yay, and then all that. And, and then there was someone who said in Macedonia, the line I quoted, the Macedonian name will never die. And I said, that's it. I know that's my story because it's still there.
Yes, it's still something that people are dealing with. It hasn't ever resolved.
Nope.
Right.
I don't know if it will. And you go to Greece and there's still sequestering Greek Macedonians. So, things you can't do, dances you can't dance, languages you can't speak, etc.
Etc. Yeah, absolutely. When someone's done reading your book, other than a good story, other than, me wanting to save poor Anna from herself, what do you want people to walk away with? What do you want them to understand?
I want them to understand how deeply self can internalize others' views of them, number one. That internalized, it's like the double consciousness. It's like W.E.B. Du Bois. It's when you have the perceptions of others that determine your own sense of yourself. And that, to me, described me and many Jews I knew, and my own son when he was in school, and I talked to the principal who made a big deal about Tet and all these other affiliated. It was a magnet school in New Orleans and very diverse. So I said, but you don't do anything except the Hanukkah song about Jews. And he said, well, it's sad, but I'll tell you, I don't think the Jewish kids here want to be, called attention to. Yeah. And I'm just like, I hadn't thought it out.
Right. Right. So, I found that piece, not being Jewish, not having ever had that, I found that piece to be one of the most sad parts of the book, was that Anna was of Jewish heritage and hid it.
Yeah. Hid it because she couldn't reveal it out of fear of being shamed in some way.
Right.
Or worse. And she did have great sympathy for African Americans for the same reason, and especially for those. I had a secretary who was very fair-skinned. This was at Xavier in New Orleans, which is a Black Catholic university. And she was called the Queen of English by the jealous other secretaries because she was so fair, and yet she was not at all hoity-toity. She was not at all superior. She just happened to have a light skin.
Right.
So, seeing this and reading books like Passing, you realize that it's everywhere, really, in one way or another.
Yeah, and I, like I said, I found that to be so sad that that's such a major part of who you are, and it's a major part of your history. And then to feel like you have to hide it, I hate that. And I don't know what to do about it. As someone who stands on the outside going, I don't know. I have found that to be one of the hardest things to comprehend. It's like we've already been through the Holocaust and the horror of all of that. At this point, shouldn't we be able just to be okay with the fact that some people are Jewish and some people are not? And the answer apparently is no.
That's right. I mean, if you look at now, anti-Semitic, and I'm not talking about the protests. I mean, I would be in a protest too, because I have these issues with Netanyahu, et cetera. But that still, I'm a Jew. And I care about Israel, and I wish they could do something,
Right.
But that's the importance of Spiro in that chapter where he is telling her that we should not change ourselves for anyone else.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So you briefly mentioned that you're writing something else. Tell us a little bit more about it.
Well, I've been in this process. Right now I'm kind of stumped because I have a lot on my plate and it takes a lot of time to get back and focus. But it's a male persona, male protagonist. Mm-hmm. He's a Bosnian Serb / Orthodox Serb / Jewish Macedonian. So he's a Bosnian, and he has enlisted in the Bosnian army. His wife is Muslim. They agreed that they share the values of a multi-ethnic Bosnia, and so he goes to fight. Meantime, his family is destroyed by, he's away. They're vulnerable, and he's imprisoned by Serbs, by Croats. He runs afoul of everybody, but he escapes, and he, by hook or by crook, he also is Oxford educated. He went to Oxford from his town, Mostar, because he wanted to study the early history of the Slavs. And He has finished his PhD, has 2 kids, a wonderful life when they go back because his father's dying. And he makes his way to New Orleans because he has to get on ships that he doesn't have papers, of course.
Right.
And he doesn't have money. So he works as, whatever you do on ships.
Yeah, laborer, right.
Right. And he finds a ship that's going to New Orleans. And in New Orleans, they had just changed the regulations so that Bosnian emigres were given asylum automatically. And he, through the Catholic diocese, he is able to do that. So he's in New Orleans, but he is pursued he has terrible PTSD, and he's pursued by these ghosts, by his guilt, all of that. So it's sort of, and then he meets Anna's daughter. So that's why Max is in the story.
Yes.
And so, anyway, it's writing about someone who's essentially has no will to live, but is afraid to die at the same point, and then has to give him, and then it becomes interested in this girl because she reminds him of, and of course she would look Slavic because of her. And so anyway, there is a romance, and hopefully it will salvage him and so on.
Well, it sounds fantastic, but you don't have any idea when it's going to be done because your plate is so crazy, right?
Yeah. Working along.
Yeah, no, I understand. So Michele, if someone wanted to get in touch with you, how would they do that?
Well, I have an email. I have a Facebook page.
Okay.
The Facebook page is Michele Levy Author. And I haven't used it in forever. I haven't updated it. It just seemed not to be worthy of that. And I also have a website with my novel, and there's a Squarespace that you can,
reach out. Yeah, fantastic. And if I remember, your website is Michele F. Levy. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's Michele with one L, F, Levy, Levy. And guys, I'll have that in the show notes, so you'll be able to do that. I really recommend that you run out and grab a copy of Anna's Dance. It is a great story. You will learn a tremendous amount, and I think it will really cause you to stop and think a lot about who you are. Are there any parts of you that you're hiding? Should you, can you bring those out? And just a look at other people and what they're going through as well.
Yes, and what can we do about that?
And what can we do? So Michele, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you very much, Terry, and I hope some of you do read it.
Thank you for listening to Online for Authors, where I, Terry M. Brown, author of character-driven fiction and host of the podcast, introduce readers to characters they'd love to invite to lunch. Tune in next Tuesday for another podcast episode.